Hey there, Let's Talk Sports fans. It's Let's Talk Speed, the F1 show. We've got Last Lap Lucy back with us, and we're about to talk Texas, baby. So, quickly, that really needs to be longer, that intro.
I love it
It's
though.
just
I
so,
love it.
it's so short, but it needs to be longer. We do love it, but we need to work on that one. Before we get started, Lucy, I just think it's only safe to say, from a Formula One community point of view, we should all wish our condolences to the family of Dietrich Mateschitz, obviously the Red Bull Racing head owner of Red Bull Racing, whose impact on Formula One is pretty huge. And we were just talking before we jumped on live that at least 8 of the drivers on the Formula One grid have come through the Red Bull Academy. The money he's ploughed into the sport to change Red Bull Racing into the team that it has is massively impactful to Formula One. So we send our condolences to his family and all of them at Red Bull who are kind of obviously dealing with that. So Texas. I mean,
Texas.
typically American race, razzmatazz, full out. I mean, the race itself was, incident packed from, I wouldn't say start to finish. I mean, start, bit lull, massively
Yeah.
impactful middle bit, which was just crazy. So, where do we start to unpick? First of all, I suppose Red Bull Racing, congratulations. You've now sewn up the Constructors' Championship, asterisk, pending appeal, pending cost cut, pending how much money you spent on catering, etc., etc. So that's the major story, I suppose. Max has qualified. Max has equaled the most wins in a season.
Yeah.
I think he's got 13 now, isn't it? So, and so those are the big stories. But I guess, how do you start to break down a race that from the first corner onwards was just mayhem?
Well, I don't know. I definitely didn't disappoint.
No,
I hear a lot of people complain about COTA. I think they lump it in with a bit of a like US tracks or just the whole idea of F1 in the US. And I think people forget it's actually a really good circuit.
yeah,
It's one of my favorites just because I'm personally, I really like the tracks where there's loads of places to overtake. So COTA is definitely one of my favorites because it's one of the most like overtakey tracks there is.
absolutely. I love it as well because I think when they built it 10 years, it's crazy to think it's been like on the calendar for 10 years. It still feels like a new race. But I know when they built it, they deliberately went, right, we like the S's and Maggots and Beckett, so we'll put a similar Maggots and Beckett. We like this corner from other tracks. So I know that they went and specifically kind of picked really good bits to put into that whole track together. And I think, as you
Yeah.
said, that's why you get that sort of great racing and the overtakes. There's so many sort of sharp bends after a long straight and stuff. There's overtaking positions all over. Saw some weird places that overtaking this week as well, though. There was some overtakes happening in places
Yeah.
like, that's not an overtaking position.
But
Maybe it
that's
is
when you
now.
know it's a good track, when there's
Yeah,
so many places to just try moves. The worst thing is when there's a track and there's like one overtaking spot and it's like you just know you're going to have to wait until they come all the way around again before we see
yeah.
any action.
It's like Monaco, isn't it? If you
Yeah.
qualify on pole, it's like, yeah, well, that's that then, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's so little to it. But yeah, that's certainly not the case of COTA. I mean, obviously, turn
Yes.
one is so wide. I think you can get the whole grid round there in a 20
Yeah.
across almost. Unfortunately, Carlos proved that wasn't the case at the weekend. George's fault, Carlos's fault.
I mean, I don't think you can fault Carlos for anything in that.
Hmm.
He was just driving, I guess. George, obviously, he's the one, I guess, to blame, but I don't think it was deliberate.
Hmm.
In my opinion, it never is. And I think he was just, he locked up going into the corner or he
I
locked up
think
trying to get out the way.
one or the other. Yeah, I think there
Yeah.
was definitely I think when you saw the onboard, there was a slight inside lockup on his front left, which obviously meant
Yeah.
he can't then get over. I thought Carlos did. It almost looked like Carlos tried to cut back a little bit on Max as well, which may have shortened that sort of
Yeah.
space available. So yeah, one of those first corner racing incidents.
Yeah. Really unlucky
Thought,
for him, though. I think it
yeah,
was his third time on pole. And yeah, he's only ever won once. So I was really hoping he'd get another win under his belt, but I guess not.
it's just not meant to be so far. I mean, it's in a weird way almost indicative of the Ferrari season. Car is fast, can put it on pole, but somehow during the race or on the race or something happens, they've had a season of mismanagement, season of failure, season of just bad luck for Carlos specifically.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem to have come together for the Ferrari team, which I suppose in a good way it bodes well for next season, because if they can iron out all of those sort of team stuff, it means that we'll have closer racing, because those two teams seem really well matched. But it does seem like, unfortunately, we're at the 4 races to go, 3 races to go, and everything's kind of sewn up and done now. So it's a bit of a shame on that front. And I mean, move forward, we had 20 laps of kind of standard going round, a few overtakes, a few.
It was definitely getting a bit stale.
It was getting a bit stale, and then safety car comes out.
Valtteri Bottas, thank you for gifting us
Thank you for
beautiful race.
I don't know, having I think he had a brain melt at some point. I think it sounded like it was gusty, to be honest. Or the whole race, it did sound like the drivers were complaining about the wings.
We could see the flag going at the start as well.
Well, we couldn't see anything but the flag going.
Yeah, true.
The way the camera angle was, but I think he obviously got caught tail end. Got a bit of a tailwind or something and spun him out, which, as you say, just then opened the race up completely. Safety car, everyone bunches up. So initially we're all like, "Oh, good safety car restart, everything's going to go well," and then the Alonso Stroll. Whoa, terrifying incident to see.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on it? I mean, I've got a thought. It's.
I don't know if people are going to like this one, but I don't think it was 100% on Stroll. I think when you're the car behind, you also have a responsibility to not crash into whoever's in front of you. And while obviously Stroll shouldn't have done his little move to the outside or just into his path, I think also Alonso was, not that it was bad that he did it, he was just being risky in trying to stay behind for as long as possible to get as much slipstream, and then he just pulled out at the last second, and normally that'll work, but it is a risky move, and
you've got to expect.
Not yesterday, 2 days ago, it just didn't pay off for him, so he's got to, and even he's been saying it's a racing incident. I know people have been saying he's only saying that because he's going to Aston Martin, but I think genuinely, it's not fair to put 100% of it on Stroll when he was, he
was doing what a racing driver would do, as you say. He's going to defend. He has the right to defend his position. It was one move he made, and as you say, I think Alonso did draft it to the extreme where, by the time he pulled out, he was near enough hitting the back of Stroll's car anyway. So any movement that a racing driver is going to see you. Somebody's attacking, they pull out to the left, they're going to defend that in a certain distance. But as you say, Alonso did slipstream to the riskiest edge of it. And so,
but that's something I really like about Alonso's. I love his driving style, that he's always every second he's just calculating the absolute maximum advantage he can get on his opponents. I think that's why he's such a great driver. He's just so intelligent in the way he drives.
Every lap as you can see him either lining something up or trying something, and he puts it away, and you think, well, why did you do that? And then you see 2 laps later, he goes, so you put all that. He's that kind of driver, and it's great to watch. And as you say, it's great that even though I suppose he's made some unfortunate timing decisions, I think in his changes of, when he's moved teams, it doesn't seem to have ever been quite the right time. He's always gone to a team that's either just falling off or just not quite ready. His racing craft and his ability to get everything out of maybe at times lesser manufactured team, lesser machinery is amazing. And as you say, every single race and every single lap he's eking out as much as he can. To go from taking off, flying, smashing into a wall, dead last from the pit stop to 7th nominally with a outstanding appeal. Not so sure about the appeal. Just the race itself, how he manages to, get from, I think it's pretty safe to say most people would be like, my car just took off and flew for 20 meters in the air. I don't want to drive anymore.
I would. That would be me. If that happened to me, I'd be like, stop the car. Everybody out.
Get back. Even if you got back to the pits, it'd be like, no, sorry. No, I need a change of race suit. I need everything changed. I'm done. Right. But he somehow then gets back out. He just kept going.
And you could hear how shaken he was on the radio. It's not like he was unfazed. It just shows how brave he is to just keep going.
And get to 7th. Everyone's like, I mean, it's just like one of the drives of it, his life. And I know, as I say, there's an appeal because his wing mirror was wobbly and then fell off. from Haas, I think, who.
Yeah,
But,
I think it's fair enough for Haas to be like appealing it, because they've definitely suffered a lot of that rule. Like, I think is it 3 times Magnussen's had to,
twice or 3 times he's had to
been
get black and
meatballed.
orange. Yeah, he's just like, get off, you need to fix the bits that are flapping off. So yeah, you can see their point, but then I guess from Alpine's point of view, they're like, well, we didn't get the meatball flag, so
yeah, exactly. So I really sympathize with both teams. I think the fault is with the FIA for not appropriately calling it during the race. I think fair enough if they'd actually shown the flag during the race and brought him in, but they didn't. And it's like, you can't like retroactively penalize him for an unsafe car that didn't do anything unsafe, if that makes sense. Like, yes, it was probably unsafe at the time, but
it should have been dealt with during the race, like
exactly.
with the others. I think that's what the complaint is. It's like the FIA consistency again, you know.
Yeah.
As you say, Haas has had it 3 times for a loose wing mirror. Everyone can see the wing mirror was loose, you know, pull him in and yank it off. But the
you could literally see it like wobbling as he was driving.
I think if they'd have yanked it off, then they have to kind of stop. He's not allowed to race, is he? Because not having a wing mirror is more dangerous than having one that's flapping around. Although how it can be, it's not like he could see anything out of that mirror anyway. So unless he's that good, he can manage to see a mirror.
He's got eyes in the back of his head.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. So yeah, I mean that was that. So obviously, and then another safety car. Red Bull messing a pit stop up. Completely blew my head, that one, because they're like 2.1 seconds. They pride themselves so much on how good they are at pit stops. So then I think it was ended up like a 12-second pit stop or something.
I think it was something like that.
It's like that's all of their pit stops for 4 races in one pit stop. Which really kind of like suddenly thought maybe, just maybe, Mercedes and Lewis was getting a win this year, keeping up his, winning every season. And it was like, it really kind of energized, I think, from a watching in the UK perspective. And I'm sure, obviously, on the track it was quite different, but I think from a UK perspective, it certainly energized a lot of fans to kind of think maybe it's going to happen. And obviously, it didn't quite, because the pace of that Red Bull's just phenomenal. It's just
a
unfair.
Rocket ship.
It's a rocket ship, and obviously he just decided, okay, that's it. And you could. What I thought was interesting about it was obviously Max was similar, as you say, to Alonso's radio calls. He had that sort of moment of petulant, well done, guys, brilliant, that was fantastic. And then it was
a bit funny.
It was a bit funny, was it? Then the Red Bull
kind of like, beautiful.
Beautiful, guys, beautiful. That was fantastic. And it was like, I did like the way the Red Bull, they came back on the radio and going, yeah, we're all in this together. And you just understand that the ones that maybe got, I think what happened is the ones that got broadcast to the wider sort of everybody watching probably didn't hear the fact when he went, yeah, Max, don't forget these guys rebuilt your car when you put it in the wall, or, it was, and it soon got his head back in the game. And yeah, as you say, a complete rocket ship when he decided to like chase after Lewis. It was a shame. I mean, from a UK Lewis fan perspective, yes, it was good to see him have the pace to be in that position. But again, bittersweet was seeing it just kind of slip away.
Yeah, it was definitely like it felt like it was on the cards until we saw how fast Max was going. And definitely at that moment, I was 100% cheering for Lewis. I was like, come on, Lewis, hammer time.
Whatever you can get out, hammer time. The whole lot was coming out, wasn't it? It was, as you say, 2 or 3 laps, it looked like it was going to happen. And then suddenly you just went, oh my God, how quick is that Red Bull? Yeah.
Regarding the pit stops as well, I think it's especially a surprise for Red Bull. As you mentioned, it's like their thing. And I remember when Alex Albon was in Red Bull, I would always be like, okay, because he wouldn't always get the best strategies because he'd be, supporting Max. But at least I knew when the pit stop came, it was going to be a good one. Whereas you'd expect a team like Ferrari to be the ones that would mess it up a bit because, they sometimes have their whoopsie moments.
Yeah, we've seen it happen. They've run out with the wrong tyres and whatever else. And you just kind of go, it's Italian. Yeah, it's kind of thing. You almost in a weird way expect it. But from as you say, Red Bull, who pride themselves on that sort of in-out. I think the weird thing was, like 2 laps later, Perez came in for a 2.1 second stop.
They just redeemed themselves.
It's just like they were kind of made up for it there, but it is surprising when you say when.
It was really exciting, actually. I think it was that bad pit stop where Max came out and he was right behind Leclerc. Like that had me yelling. I was like, oh, this is good. We've got it race on our hands now. Like,
exactly.
because they were
And
literally
what's
like,
great about COTA as well is as you come out of the pits, and you obviously the guy in the racing line cuts right in front, and it's always like you always, for some reason, I always think there's going to be an accident. Out of the pits as somebody hangs a right there. It's always like,
yeah.
But yeah, that kind of added the anxiety and added the excitement to everything. You mentioned
definitely.
Alex there about obviously when he was at Red Bull.
Yes.
I gotta have to mention it because I know you're a big Alex fan, and
Oh,
you've got your
no.
red hair, and now Alex has got his blonde. It's like it was.
No.
What did you feel when he turned up at the press conference in blonde?
Oh, it's me trying to hide. Oh my goodness. Well, so I actually noticed it not at the press conference, but I think it was the night before. He went to a Williams event in Austin somewhere, and Williams were live streaming it on their page. And I clicked on the live stream. It was like 1 a.m. UK time. I was, I just got into bed. I was watching it from bed, and I saw his hair, and it was blonde, and I was just like, right. Like, I was mad at him. I gave myself 24 hours to be mad at him because I dyed my hair red. And now he's gone blonde, and it doesn't even look as good.
Blonde coming. No, I didn't see blonde coming. I mean, the red looks good on him. Where's
I liked the red.
Why is he?
I don't know. Red made sense because he went to the orphanage. He dyed his hair red with the kids. It was a really sweet story, and now it's just like he's just gone blonde.
Just got just like American cheerleader blonde.
Yeah.
Maybe that was it. Maybe because I mean there were a number of US additions to some of the cars which some looked okay, some looked a bit less okay, should we say? So I mean it's quite interesting, Austin, where they do all the garish sort of Americanized over the top things.
Yeah.
I don't know why they do it for that one and not the two other races yet.
I guess the other ones are trying to be seen as like more classy, and not that it's not classy to be American, but like you can't really have horses come riding into the paddock when you're trying
Texas thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's Texas, bigger,
exactly.
bolder, brasher.
Yeah.
Whereas Vegas and Miami, you can't really see how they're
they're trying to be like more like glitz and glam kind of thing, and sell themselves as like one of the more like upmarket races, like Monaco.
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to replace Monaco, aren't they? I feel like we're going to lose Monaco soon.
Yeah, I know it's the jewel. Everyone loves it. And, it's not a great race. But, for glitz and glamour and everything else, yes, it has all of that in the history and stuff.
It's pretty as well.
It is very pretty. And you do get some amazing sort of...
And qualifying's really good.
And it is the best
qualifying.
The qualifying at Monaco is like the best qualifying ever.
And
that's it for the season. Once you've done that, and as you say, the drivers love it because it is such a challenging, constantly on edge track. But from a spectator, you can see other tracks kind of coming in with more money and stuff, and that's kind of the concern with some of the older tracks. As you say, Spa. We've got lucky. We've still got Spa. We've still got Silverstone for a few more years. But some of those other sort of historic tracks, are constantly every year. It's almost like the risk is that they're going to lose another one and another one because it's a global sport and it is growing and we get that, but it's a shame that we potentially lose some of those historical tracks which are, and I suppose some of the older tracks are better tracks because no disrespect to, is it still Herman Tilke who does most of the tracks? I think it is.
Not sure, to be honest.
Yeah, I know he designs pretty much most of them. Some of them are a bit samey. Some of them aren't, don't come with quite so much.
I mean, my main problem with like the samey tracks is when we're being introduced to like Saudi Arabia, Qatar. They all feel very similar, and like Abu Dhabi as well.
Like, literally, it's just like you've taken one track and just twisted it a bit and put it the same one.
Yeah, and it's very like I don't want loads of races in a small space. So like the kind of Middle East ones, like Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. I feel like we only need one of those. And I like Bahrain, so I'm keeping Bahrain.
I'd like to keep Bahrain as well. It's got the good tracks aspect to it, but I suppose Abu Dhabi has that sort of glitz and glamorous effect as well. So So
I'd personally remove Saudi Arabia and Qatar. I mean, didn't they literally have like a missile in Saudi Arabia? Yeah. So in my opinion, I'd personally not go there.
Not that. Just
I just
for a few more years. Just leave that. There's some issues with that region. And there are.
I do know a lot of. I have a friend who went to it, and I know it was a really good event, like for all the people that were living there. But there are, like I was saying, there's a lot of races in a very small space. I'd rather see it more spread out. I'd like to see at least 2 races in Africa, maybe Like
Yeah.
obviously South Africa, and then maybe somewhere else a bit more like kind of West Africa maybe would be fun. Like Dakar or something. I don't think they have any F1 grade tracks, but that
That's
would
the
be
problem,
cool.
isn't it? Where else? You know,
Yeah.
I know there's talk about Kailami coming back, and they're trying to fix that and get.
I know that's quite like a fan favorite.
Hmm.
And then also South America. I feel we've only got one in South America, haven't we?
Feels like an untapped resource there somewhere.
Yeah,
I know.
I think it's Argentina has a good one. I forget.
I'm sure they must have Montevideo or something. I'm sure there's
possibly. I don't remember.
I don't remember because it's been so long. But you've got to think that there are capabilities in there, and you know,
Asia.
Asia is just like surely
there's Bud Circuit in India. That one is so good. And Sepang.
Didn't they race there once or twice or something, and then
something like that?
It was
that's like top of my list to come back. I really liked that circuit.
Didn't like the Vietnam track, to be honest. That one wasn't great.
We never saw it, did we?
It never quite. No, did we?
It never happened.
Race? It never happened in the end. That's
because of COVID.
And there was one in. Wasn't there a Korean race? Mark Webber, Korea. I'm sure there was.
I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, but
We've
again,
gone on such a tangent here.
Sorry, yeah, but completely. We didn't come in with an agenda.
Tracks?
You can tell. Tracks. No, we're talking about the completely. How do we get onto tracks? Oh, Middle East and stuff. I can't even remember how we got here. But yeah, there's so many untapped markets for Formula One in that global market. You think, as you say, Middle East seems to have grabbed the money and grabbed the headlines and lots of races. But you know, there are other tracks and other markets for F1 to look at, and maybe it's something. What have we got? 24 races next season.
Think so. Yeah, it's a lot. It's too many, to be honest.
It's almost getting too much, isn't it? Because there'll be no off season at some point. It's almost going to become a 12-month season soon enough.
It's kind of nice as well as a fan, when it becomes race week and you're like, oh my gosh, it's race week, and now it's kind of like, okay, well, there's another race this weekend. Like
back to back.
You just go like, oh, okay, it's race week again. Like it feels like a little bit of that like excitement of, oh my gosh, it's race week. Formula One's happening this weekend. This is awesome. And obviously, there's the pressure on like the teams, the mechanics, all that. They're not getting a lot of time to be at home and everything. And I can imagine it's very tiring for everyone involved. I mean, we've seen some of the drivers after triple headers. They look absolutely wrecked.
Just like gaunt, don't they? Because they lose so much weight during the race, and then they've got and then it's just like a constant cycle of PR.
So much as I love more races, at the same time, there wouldn't be harm in having a bit less.
Yeah, as you say, the excitement in between. It's like every 2 weeks. It's like it's race week. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
But now it's like it's race week. Oh, it's race week again. Where are we this week? You're almost kind of running to catch up. So as you say, from the team to the driver's perspective, how that must take a toll on them. Yeah, 24 to me sounds pushing the envelope of.
Yeah, I get that they want to keep having these like new record-breaking number of races, but like they don't have to keep doing that, if that makes sense. Like it feels like the last 3 years have been record-breaking, and it's like, okay,
it's like you've won more races than anybody else. It's like, well, it's because there's more races in the season.
Yeah.
And you start to get those arguments of you can't say that this race was better than that driver, or you've got the records is better. It's like, well, you had more chances because you had 25 races a season.
Yeah.
Of course,
even like the win records, like obviously Max is going to get close to. I don't know actually, and not obviously, but there's a very high, in my opinion,
a good chance. Yeah.
If Red Bull keep being at the top, they don't have to be dominant, but as long as they're still a top team, Max can just keep getting like, even if he gets 5 wins a season, that's going to add up really quick. If he's in F1 for another 10 years, that's 50 extra wins, and I can definitely see him breaking the win record at some point, and that
just
kind of
because of sheer weight of number, you then starts to,
and that's nothing against Max. That's just the fact that like this is how F1 is now. There's a lot more races. It's a lot easier to like rack up the wins, so to speak. So
and that's it. As you say, sheer weight of numbers, sheer chances of winning. A 24 race season. Chances are every driver on the grid has a chance of winning a race with madness and weather and whatever else. Whereas the 8 and 12 race seasons, where it was a little bit more difficult. Does that kind of will you almost at some point have to split some of the records and say this was pre this time or whatever else? It's an interesting one because it kind of does take away some of the shine of the most win records or the most poles or the most whatever's, because you're like but I suppose that's the whole nature of Formula One, isn't it? It constantly evolves, constantly moves forward.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be like 8 races a season.
Yeah.
So it's massively grown from there.
And you can't. I mean, that's part and parcel. And I think in a weird way, going back to the beginning of the show, that's a big emphasis is on Red Bull on that, and bringing a lot of money and bringing a load of the new drivers through. Yeah. It did kind of energize, because there was a period where Formula One, late 80s, early 90s, kind of just disappeared off of most people's radar. Formula One, it was pretty dull, it was pretty monotonous. Everybody knew exactly what was happening for 10 years. The diehard fans were watching it. Yes, Schumacher was just supreme, but it was literally like 2 red cars and nobody else. And so it's interesting that it has come back into such a global market, and money has been spent, and all the guys who are now involved in Liberty Media and all that. So you can see that side of it growing. But yeah, I think at some point they're going to have to.
Did you just mute yourself? I can't hear you.
I do it all the time.
There we go.
I waft my hands around and I hit the top of the mic and it's got a mute
I heard
button.
something just go clonk and then nothing, and all I can see is
arms moving, everything. As I say, yeah, they're gonna have to cap it at some point. This is the maximum amount of seasons. This is the maximum races, because you say a 12-month season would be insane for drivers, teams, everything else. And it just saturation levels. I think the fans would just inevitably either get bored, you just can't keep up, and you'd be like, okay, well, the race, season's done. 13, 14 races in, if you get one of those dominant seasons, then those extra 10 races are almost like, well, you're shoehorning, and why would you bother, type thing. So I think they have to be careful on that front.
Yeah, definitely, especially with like all the new Drive to Survive fans coming in. Obviously there's still a lot of like novelty, and but then as more seasons go on, you're going to get more used to it. Like I've definitely found I'm not as interested in practice sessions anymore. I think I mentioned this last time, because it's like I just know what's going to happen anyway. They're just going to drive around a bit. I know all the technical stuff that's going to, they're going to see how the track is, see how the tires go. It was with the tire test.
With the tire thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They meant to do that in Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the weather in Japan just ruined it, didn't it? But it was interesting from somebody who, both of us are like, we follow F1. We're not Drive to Survive new fans, so we're just kind of in it to see what's kind of new, to see almost a behind the scenes F1 thing, because normally that kind of testing would be happening, away from cameras and test sessions and stuff. So that was an interesting addition to see the mystery of it as well. I love the way it was completely blind tested. You knew they were on a test tire because it had no color stripes, but you didn't know if it was the soft or the hard or whatever compound it was. It was completely random, and you could just see all the commentators were just like, "Don't know what's going on. What tire is it? We don't know. We don't care. What do the times mean? Nobody knows." So I thought that was quite interesting to see it out in front of the public, where it's usually hidden away by teams go around their test tracks and thrash out tires for hours on end.
But yeah, I guess going back to what we were saying about like saturation, I think, as someone who's seen a lot of practice sessions, now when there's practice, I'm kind of just like, oh, I've seen practice. There'll be another practice tomorrow or later today. And it's very easy to just, I'll give it a miss for this one.
Especially depending on time zones and whether or not it's like...
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I think anyway, I would never like wake up at like 3 a.m. for Japan FP1 or something. Like that's just not worth it, in my opinion. I'll watch the highlights.
There are levels, aren't there? And that is the extreme level. Yeah, FP1 where nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be shakedown tests. It's like, no, that's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, you've got to be careful that, 24 races does the weekend itself. Nobody really tunes in. Nobody gets excited about Friday and then Saturday. Quickly for qualifying, and that's it. And then, so the saturation level is a risk for the whole global sport, I suppose.
Yeah. Formula One, if you're listening.
If you're listening to two people randomly chatting on a Tuesday afternoon, take it to heart that we think 24 is almost too many already.
Yeah.
And so then moving on to, as you say, race week again, we're 2 days into race week already, even though it feels
Mexico.
like Mexico this weekend, which
I'm
there is
excited.
it's a bit exciting, and it's a good track. It's a track which really damages tires, as far as I remember. So it could be an interesting tire choice one. But obviously, I suppose we're now into the paying places of all the other. That's where all the the intrigue is now. Who's going to finish second in the championship? Drivers wise, who's going to it starts to get, I wouldn't say niggly in the constructors, but who finishes in which place starts to become more apparent.
I know there's been a really good battle like the whole season between George Russell and Carlos Sainz, which is kind of ironic because they had contact this race or last race. But like those two have been like really close. I think there was only 1 point between them going into this round, and obviously George will have picked it up. I wanted to say, I don't know if you noticed, I was just on my phone. Have you heard the Mexican F1 theme?
No.
All right. It's been... It's really good.
I hope they play that this weekend.
It's from the Mexican Grand Prix TikTok account, and they had their mascot, the mariachi guy. He's got a new helmet this year. It's got gold bits on it to celebrate 60 years of Mexican Grand Prix. And they played that song, and it's kind of taken off on TikTok. Everyone's been loving it. So
yeah. It would be great if they showed that on. Or
I hope they do, because it's like it got me going like so now I'm like I'm
that's
so
kind
hyped.
Of what you need, isn't it? Yeah.
That's how F1 needs to get their fans excited for the race weekend.
Again, if you're listening, F1, that's what you need to do. Change your intros per country you go
to. Per country and have like traditional music.
Even if it is tongue in cheek, bring it out.
What would the UK have? Would we have like?
We'd probably just have the very normal one. We wouldn't want to.
I feel like we'd have some trumpets.
Yes, trumpets. There'd be like a brass band type.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's kind of all I can think of, like some colliery band from up north somewhere doing that. That's what I can imagine doing it like. Yeah. So just going back to the driver standing, I'm just looking at it now. So George has got 218, Carlos is on 202.
Yeah,
but then that'll be the battle. But then you've got Charles Leclerc on 267 and Sergio 265.
Ooh.
So there's those little bits that are going to be interesting going forward. I'm not sure where the team standings are actually. That would be interesting to work out, because I know there's a lot of that.
I've not really been keeping track of too many like individual driver battles. I did remember the George Carlos one off the top of my head, because I tend to watch the races with my mum and my uncle. And my mum loves Carlos and my uncle loves George, and the two of them are like they get so competitive with it. So it's really funny to like see who's coming out on top each time and kind of watch them like laughing about who's coming out on top.
I mean, it adds that layer all the way down the field, and I think that is one of the things that this year and the new regulations have allowed for. I think we talked about it last time. Is battles all the way down the field are actually really important. People are chasing each other, and I thought that was interesting, as we mentioned about COTA, that through the S's at COTA was amazing to see from some onboard shots how closer the drivers were following through there this year with the new regs compared to some other ones where they'd be like, oh, I can't go through there that close, because they'd do a Valtteri Bottas and wash out there. So that was interesting. Sorry, Valtteri. Oh, and I suppose this, we've got, what is it, three races left.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at the teams. Alpine are on 144 and McLaren are on 138. That's really the only.
Yeah. Aston Martin apparently are quite close to somewhere. I think
they are 1 point behind Alfa Romeo.
Yeah. So that's going on.
And it is interesting because, for those, as you say, those Drive to Survive newer fans might not understand the intricacies of why. I realised I did it as I did it. Don't realise the importance, obviously, of constructors' championships and points, that every single point equates to almost £10 million or so. I can't quite remember, but they get an awful lot of money depending on where they finish in the constructors' championship.
Right.
And, the more points you make, that it actually, almost equates to near enough $1 million per point. So those battles become massively important going forward for those sort of small...
I know I'm not dressed appropriately to say this, but my team is Williams, and
you're just running through your repertoire at the moment. Last week Red Bull and Aston. Now you got
No, I
McLaren.
just love F1 merch. I love wearing it. I don't wear normal clothes. So I just happened to wear McLaren today. It's actually the Miami. I would turn around, but that's going to be a bit uncomfortable. It says Miami on the back. I thought because we just had the US race, it would be appropriate. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Williams are basically the only team that don't really have a lot on the line right now. I'd say, bless them. Looking at the constructors' standings, there's a little bit of a gap.
A little bit of a gap ahead. Yeah, I don't think they're going to catch the team ahead of them.
Unless, it's a bit painful.
I mean, it's still 8 points, though. It's a step forward.
Yeah, it's. Yeah.
I was trying to look for the silver. They have scored points. They've scored more points this year than they did last year. So, it's a step forward.
Yeah, exactly. And it's quite, honestly, it's nice because I can just watch Williams and be like, yeah, go team. And like they're fighting for 14th. And it's great fun because there's no pressure. There's no stress. It's just fun because I know they're not going to win.
Yeah.
But I can still enjoy it.
And I suppose thinking about it, I thought Williams just announced their new drivers, did they not? Or is it still...
They've basically announced. So they've said they'll have Logan Sargent as their second driver, but he has to get the super license points. And I believe it's basically 95% he will. He basically just needs to not have a massive mess up in his last race. I think there's only one F2 race left in Abu Dhabi. And he needs to either finish 5th in the standings without penalty. No. 5th in the standings with penalty points, or 7th in the standings without penalty points, as long as he completes the 2 FP1 sessions he's signed up for, if I remember that correctly. Yeah, I know he's kind of split opinions on Twitter. I know there's been a few people saying, maybe they don't agree with his political views. I haven't really looked into it too much myself yet. But from what I've heard, it seems to be just his family's political views, and they're kind of assuming he's got the same.
I just think with Americanism, you're either Republican or Democrat, and if your family is and you live in this state and whatever else, it's like, well, it doesn't necessarily does it necessarily equate to him being a good racing driver, and does it in effect matter? And then that's the flip side, isn't it? But it depends if they are very left or very right wing views, I suppose, is where it becomes.
Obviously, we don't want someone who's being racist or sexist or anything like that,
and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and I suppose that's.
I don't think I've seen any proof of that from him, but so that's basically been the fan reception. People have been a bit worried about it, but and also people have been saying it might be a bit too soon for him to go into F1. Maybe another year in F2 would be better because he's kind of come through the ranks quite quickly.
Because nobody else has done that I can think of that's been very successful.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen, does it? Where drivers come through the ranks really quickly and go into Formula One and happen to win races and championships. That's the pattern. That's exactly what the pattern is.
Max, right?
No, I'm thinking it was older. No, it's previous to that. I'm sure Lewis came through pretty quickly. I'm pretty sure Nico wasn't hanging around when he came through. So, I'm just saying it's been Formula One's way of, hey, this guy's doing really well in the juniors. And that's
the thing, you've got to give them a shot.
Yeah.
While they can develop further. And if it's not the right fit, then he can go. I'm excited to see how he'll do with Alex. I feel like Alex will almost definitely beat him. I don't think there's any reason Logan Sargent would outperform him, but we'll see. Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I mean, he might have his practice sessions, and there might be Logan's done better than Alex in a session in FP2 or something, but in the races and stuff, you would have seen that Alex would then take on that team leader, mentor, senior driver sort of role, which will be really good for his sort of development as well, I think.
I've definitely noticed Alex is quite good as the lead driver mentor kind of role. I know he was mentoring Yuki a lot in his year off. And you could definitely see that Yuki's confidence kind of grew with that. So that was really good. And also obviously he didn't do too great as Max's second driver. So I'm hoping just have him knowing he's the lead driver will help him get another good season. I was going to say something else. Oh yeah, Nick DeVries at AlphaTauri.
Yes.
He's the one I'm most excited for and most excited to see how he'll do, because like Piastri and Sargent, they're both obviously rookies, but Nick De Vries is already a world champion in Formula E, so it's going to be very interesting and also Formula 2 champion.
I think just
20,
about
2019.
Maybe
I forget. No, 2020.
Yeah, he's certainly not the rookie like some of the other two. He's certainly has, as you say,
he's got a lot more like credentials, and I'm very, very interested to see like how, having won Formula E, having won races, championship, because there's one.
Well, hang on, didn't he score points in his first race?
Yes, he did.
So he's already kind of gone, hey, I'm here and I'm good enough to do this.
So I'm very excited to see that, and he's a really nice guy. So I did get to meet him. I don't know if I mentioned this.
You did when you were at the
I will always talk about it, because like anytime De Vries is brought up, I have to tell him one. He's so lovely.
He's lovely. He took a picture. Yeah, why would you not say that? Absolutely, get it in every time you can.
Absolutely brilliant, personality wise. So I will definitely be rooting for him next year. Without fail.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it last week. It gives you the balance. Then you've got your Williams and Alex, and then you've got that's not gone quite so
someone
well.
who might actually have a chance of frequently scoring points.
Be in and about the top 10. Yeah, it definitely gives you the balanced sort of view. I was going to mention like the potential future of the W Series. I know it's kind of got curtailed this season, which is a real shame. I thought they were doing so well, but it seems like there might still be a lifeline, so fingers crossed that's going to happen. It's just it's one of those things that I know Formula One is like the boys' toys and whatever else, and we were watching it this weekend, or even my wife said it's great to see you're seeing so many more engineers and seeing so many more pit crew and female staff being shown on cameras and being there, and a lot of the guys on the pit wall, it's like you can see the ponytails and you can kind of see how women are in sport now. It's such a shame that the W Series kind of had to quickly fold or whatever else, but hopefully Formula One, if you're listening, seems to be a theme. Maybe we should rename this Formula One if you're listening. Please make sure you throw money at whatever you call that next series, because it's essential. Seeing the women on the pit wall means that girls can go, I can be an engineer, I can do that.
Yeah.
They need to see drivers doing the driving so they can, they
and it's worth mentioning, like, there are a lot of women in motorsport, like all through, like, especially in like karting, there's a lot more coming through now. And there are other series where there are like there's the Iron Dames, they're really good. I forget what series that is, but something. They're very good, basically. And then there's some women have done like I can't remember.
There's Tatiana Calderon is currently driving an F2, isn't she?
Yeah, but she's like a replacement driver, so and she broke her hand or something, so I will not count that one.
Maybe not count that one then. Okay.
But yes, there's a lot of women out there, and I think while people have their feelings about W Series being like only for women and wanting to avoid segregation, which I agree with, because I think motorsport should be mixed, because it doesn't matter who's at the wheel of the car. It's not like, it's not like you're going to have any...
It's not going to have any benefit because of whatever, hormones or whatever, there's no plus or minuses, is there? You should be able to, your driving talent is irrelevant to the gender you are. So
yeah, exactly. While obviously people disagree with like the segregation aspect of it, I think it's still needed at the moment as like just a way to show, like, I don't know how to, and it's like for representation. That's the one. The whole thing of like, if you can see it, you can be it. So I think W Series is going to be one of those things that it'll be around for like a few years, and then when it's not needed anymore, when there's enough women kind of coming through, then they'll finish. And I think that's the right thing, in my opinion, because there doesn't need to be that divide. But at the moment, it is doing good things. So
I think so, yeah. And it doesn't feel tokenism, I suppose, as well. It's a proper racing series. It's fully, backed up. But as you say, it needs to be separate right now to get enough women and girls through the pipeline to realize they can do it. And as you say, in 2 or 3 years, when there's that sort of upswelling coming through the ranks in the F1, F3, F2, when there's enough to pick from, then maybe the W Series doesn't need to be there. It can then sort of go away and retire gracefully because it's done its job.
Yeah,
Just to
exactly.
put it forefront to make people realise that, hey, just because Formula One's there and it's predominantly always been male or dominated and oriented, but it doesn't have to be. And hopefully that's will happen.
Yeah.
Marvellous. See? F1. Hope you're listening. Definitely the theme of this show. Definitely.
Yeah.
Right, Lucy, I think this has been awesome. Again,
yes.
Enjoy Mexico. Slightly better time zone, although it's the same.
I think they've scheduled it a bit earlier.
Bit earlier,
slightly.
Slightly. So it's not like deep in the middle of the night, fortunately enough for some of those practice sessions.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll catch up next week and we'll talk all about Mexico and the crazy F1 theme. They've got to play it again, play it again as our soundbite going out. That will be our closing. That'll be it. Perfect. Let's talk sports fans. Enjoy the weekend. Bye for now.